Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
How about a quick Saturday pod? How you feel about that?
Yeah.
Nice Saturday pod.
Nice little Saturday.
Welcome. Yeah, what will you posting on
Some
Saturday?
people out, apple picking, maybe going out to eat.
Yeah.
We're sitting in our rooms talking football.
Yep.
NFL football too.
It's
Not
actually
even college
dark
ball.
and it's a Thursday night for us, but it's Saturday for you guys.
Yeah, that's true.
Tomorrow's football. We got college football. Hopefully, you know what? I'm starting to dislike Caleb Williams a little bit.
Developing take.
He's acting like off the field, he's acting like a dink. Great player on the field. I hope he throws another 3-pick game.
Hey, you might be talking about the Patriots'
Arrogant-
future quarterback.
Arrogant,
there, right?
yeah, that's true. Well, hey, push him down the boards, right?
Yeah. He won't be on Bill's big board.
Yeah, for real. But anyway, welcome into the pod. We got week 7 buys and sells on this podcast. We're gonna break down some guys you can go out and purchase, and some guys that you can put on the front lawn for your fantasy football yard sale. By hopefully it's more like an auction than a yard sale, but
I was going to say, that's kind of a tough way of putting it.
yeah, dude. But anyway, so we got week 7 buys and sells. Before we do that, check out our website, fantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review and share this with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below any questions you may have. All right, let's start with the buys, as we usually do. And we'll start with Mr. Jordan Addison. And I can't remember if we did him in the past, right? We did not do Jordan Addison in the past.
I don't think we have touched on Jordan Addison on one of these shows.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about Jordan Addison. So he had kind of like a good start to the season, and then he flopped out a little bit. And
it was really 1 week.
Yeah, it was
week 4.
Really 1 week, week 4.
The week I needed him most.
So he had 16, 16, 11, 0, 18, and 11. And his snap share in week 5 and 6 has increased to 75 to 86%, 75 and 86%. And the biggest thing is Justin Jefferson's going to be out for another 3 weeks, maybe 4.
Yes.
So with Jefferson out, Addison takes over as the main guy here. And I think this week's game without Justin Jefferson. It wasn't good against Chicago, and he only had 5 targets, which I don't like. But with the increased target share, with the increased snap percentage, I think that means good things for Jordan Addison. And I think he is the second wide receiver on this team. So when Jefferson's not there, he gets elevated into that starting role. So I like Jordan Addison as a trade target this week. I would do it before Sunday, and I try to get him now because, like, your best value for him is going to be over the next 3 weeks, and then if he does explode and have a lot of really good games, you could use him in a trade later when Jefferson gets back and maybe sell high on him. So kind of play the fantasy football stock market, friends.
Yep.
Like Jordan Addison though.
No, me too. He's on my fantasy team, so I don't want to get too crazy. And I'd even be willing to trade him the way my team looks. But anyway, Addison has been a really solid wide receiver 2 this year. Outside of that week 4 game, 16, 16, 11, 18, 11. That's what you want from a wide receiver 2, honestly.
Yeah.
He's been very solid. And you're right, with Jefferson gone, he is kind of serving as that de facto wide receiver 1, wide receiver. He's at least guaranteed to be one of the top 2 receivers each week, which he wasn't early on in the season. But I think every single week, like the 5 targets he got this week might be the lowest he's going to get over the next 5 weeks. I think he's going to be a lock for 7, 8 targets every single week. I mean, Jefferson was commanding like 12, 13 targets a week. So you lose that in an offense, even if they throw the ball like, 6 or 7 less times and they run the ball 6 or 7 more times, you're still missing out on 7 targets that are going to receivers. So Addison should, and there was games where Addison was still getting 5, 6, 7, 8 targets with Jefferson in there. He had 9 against Kansas City. So I think we could be seeing some games going forward with Addison at double-digit targets. And if he's doing that, he's going to be really, really good for fantasy. And could even be like a low-end wide receiver 1 for the next couple weeks. Not when Jefferson comes back, but while Jefferson is out, I could see that as being a possibility.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Let's move to the next guy. His name is Devonta Smith. He was on our show last week on the buys, and I figured we'd throw him on again because this is a sheer buy low candidate right now. And I think he's a lot better than he has been playing. But this week he played the New York Jets. He had 9 fantasy points, so he took a step forward from his 1 point against the Rams. But he did get 11 targets, and I think that's the highlight there, is that if the target share continues to stay for him in that 8 to 10 range, and he gets a lot of targets every single game, then he obviously is a value. And I think, he just had an 11 target game. He's had 1 in 9. Like, the person who has him on their team right now is probably ready to pull their hair out, because this is one of those guys that's like edging on, you kind of have to play him every week because he's that good, but he's not producing, and I keep losing weeks because of him. And so I think you can take advantage of that a little bit with the person that has him, and then try to maybe slide in on the low and get Devonta Smith and hope that, obviously a turnaround is coming. Miami, Washington are 2 easier matchups. I don't know if what's his name is going to be back this week, Jalen Ramsey. If he is, then that might make it a little bit tougher on Devonta, because that pushes all the cornerbacks down on the depth chart. And Ramsey would most likely shadow A.J. Brown, I would assume, which means that their second corner, whose name escapes me, Xavier Howard, is he? I assume he's active, and he would be.
Yeah, I don't think is Ramsey playing though.
I don't think so.
I think he's still out. I think he's out until week
So if that's the case, then this should open up Devonta Smith a little bit underneath against Miami, and it should be a decent game for him to have some success against the Miami Dolphins. And then he's got Washington the following week. So it's like, those 2 games should be easier matchups and should get more production for him. I think Devonta Smith is a good ad, and I do it today.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm trying to pull up real quick his schedule rest of the season. I don't know if it's super great, but
Seattle,
it's not.
Giants, Arizona.
Right.
Love it.
His playoff matchup is juicy. It's 3 very easy matchups. And we had Smith on the show last week, but we were like, I said temper your expectations against the Jets, and he only had 9 points. He could have had a lot more. I mean, we know he had 11 targets. He had and this is rare, like Devonta Smith, I think in his NFL career has only like a couple drops. He usually doesn't drop the football. He had a big drop, not just like play-wise, but situational wise. I think it was one of their last drives of the game. It would have been a big first down. He dropped the ball. It was like a 30-yard pass. Like he would have had 4 fantasy points just on that play alone, which would have bumped him up to 13, and it looks a little bit better on the stat sheet. So he could have had a pretty decent week. He just didn't. And now he's got Miami, which is, as you said, a great matchup. Washington's a great matchup. Dallas is a tough matchup, but without Trayvon Diggs, they haven't been as good defensively. And I think that could be a game where Smith, despite being a bad matchup, could have a big week. Kansas City, same thing, is a tough matchup, but that game could be a shootout, Super Bowl rematch. Same thing with the Bills. They don't have a great defense against receivers. They're middle of the pack, but another game that could be a shootout. 49ers is apparently a good matchup because teams are usually behind and their corners are their weak spot on defense. Then it's Dallas again, and then it's all those great matchups rest of the season for the playoffs. So I don't hate his schedule, even though there's a couple tough games in there. It looks pretty good. He's struggling, so it's a good time to buy him. He's a really good guy to have on this list, I think.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's move to the third guy, another wide receiver in the final buy this week, which is Brandon Ayuk. I say this because it's not going to be possible to buy Brandon Ayuk after this week. He's going up against Minnesota. There's no CMC. There's no Deebo Samuel. This should be a Brandon Ayuk explosion week against the Minnesota Vikings. After that happens, you're not going to be able to trade for him. But right now, he's had a couple of mediocre weeks, and it's likely that Brandon Ayuk is going to obviously have a big game this week, but it's likely that you can get him on the low somewhat for a player that has kind of underperformed the last couple weeks. And obviously what happened in San Francisco last week, he legit, like earlier in that game, even though he had a tough afternoon, I think it was like 10, 11 points. I got to look though. I just want to confirm that.
Yeah, he had like 10 points, I think.
Yeah, he had 11. So he had a catch that was basically a touchdown in his hands early in the game. And I don't know if it was the Purdy throw or it was just him, but he dropped the pass and it obviously didn't go for a touchdown. But it was like he was over the defender, and if he caught the ball, he was going to run it to the house. If that play happens, he has like a 150-yard game and a touchdown. And it obviously turns into a 20-plus fantasy point performance instead of an 11-point performance. So I like that for Brandon Ayuk. There's a lot of potential for explosion with him, especially when he's the guy getting all of the targets. This week, I anticipate he'll get all the targets, but it's going to be a lot easier of a matchup than Cleveland or Dallas was, and it should be a big week for Brandon Ayuk. So I would trade for him before that happens, because after it happens, it's going to be hard to get him. He's got Minnesota, he's got Cincinnati, he's got Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Philly, Seattle, Arizona, Baltimore, and Washington. If you go on Fantasy Pros, you'll see a lot of greens. So
yeah,
this is going to be a stretch of the schedule that gets really easy for Brandon Ayuk. And if you don't get him now, you probably won't rest of season.
Yeah, no, agreed. Ayuk has been really, really good this year. I feel like he's taken another step. Like, he was already a good receiver. I think like his route running, like I've seen clips on Twitter and people that know better than me about real life wide receiving play, and they say like he's turning into like a top 10 guy, like for real NFL. And I don't blame it, and especially this week in particular with no Deebo, like he could have a monster week.
Yeah.
He had 32 in week 1. Like I could see it, maybe not 32, but like 20 plus against Minnesota. And then with his matchups going forward, like I think people haven't registered yet that he is, because he was drafted like 6th round.
Yeah.
He's at least
like
a wide receiver 2. At least. And he might, by the end of the season, be like a low end wide receiver 1.
Yep.
He's really good.
That's where I think Fantasy Pros
probably top 15
expert consensus rankings has Brandon Ayuk 8. Yeah,
that might be a little high. Is that because Deebo's out?
That's for rest of season,
right? But something how.
Yeah, that's true. But no, I
would say that like
I think it's well. So here's the
top 15.
Here's the thing with Brandon Ayuk is that, like you were just saying, a lot of people are saying he might be a top 10 receiver in the NFL. He has become the wide receiver 1 on the 49ers. And like Brandon Ayuk is a great multi-tool. I mean, Deebo Samuel's a great multi-tool.
He's the Swiss Army knife.
He's a Swiss Army knife. So they can use him in a plethora of different
ways. He's the
ways.
quote-unquote weapon.
Yes. So they like to use him in like a couple of different ways. But if you're just talking about a pure wide receiver,
yeah,
Brandon Ayuk is better. And so that's starting to show this year in some of the opportunities that Ayuk is getting. But on this list, they have like Amon-Ra behind Brandon Ayuk. I would not do that. I'd put Amon-Ra St. Brown over Ayuk.
You have Amon-Ra behind him?
Yeah. So
I would get like 30 points.
I know. I would put Amon-Ra ahead of Brandon Ayuk and make Brandon Ayuk 9. But the guys after him, like DK Metcalf, Puka Nacua, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, I'd put.
CeeDee Lamb's wide receiver 16 right now, rest of season.
Yeah, I would put him top 10.
That's another buy, secret buy, by the way.
There you
go. But anyway, yeah. So no, Brandon Ayuk has been fantastic, and I think if the easy matchups come and he is scoring 20 to 25 to 30 points on these big weeks, like he's definitely a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy football if that happens. To me, I think he's anywhere between 10 and 12 if we're being realistic, and I had to do my rankings. But if you be like,
still, that's much higher than I think people.
Oh yeah,
like I think when people think Brandon Ayuk, they're thinking he's a good like flex.
Yeah, because
they're not thinking
he was drafted in the 6th round. Like his performance early in the season allowed me to trade Devonta Smith to you.
Yeah, as someone who has both these guys, would you rather DJ Moore or Brandon Ayuk?
I would rather have Brandon Ayuk probably.
I would agree. I think I would put Ayuk higher.
If freaking DJ Moore had a quarterback.
Yeah. Well, they're good for week 5.
We've been saying that for a long time, though. But anyway, all right, let's move to the sells. Unless you have anything else on Brandon Ayuk.
No, we can move on.
All right, number 1 on the sell list, and this is probably the biggest sell high in the history of sell highs. But I
would argue there's someone else on this list that's close.
That's true.
But yes, this guy is definitely up there.
So it's Adam Thielen. And what Adam Thielen has done this year in fantasy football has been nothing short of awesome. And he's been fantastic.
Look at the target share.
After week 3, 20, 31, 15, 27, 28. Target share freaking out the roof. He's wide receiver 3 in fantasy football. And he's been fantastic on the season. He's been one of Bryce Young / is it Andy Dalton who's the backup?
Yeah.
One of their favorite targets. And while he's been really, 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 really freaking good, I don't think this can continue. I've seen players do this. He's kind of on the older side. No one anticipated that he would have the amount of success that he had. And usually around when older players come out earlier in the season and absolutely cook like this, it typically doesn't last after week 10. They start falling off and injuries start happening and other things start happening. I think Adam Thielen is at the point where he's about to hit kind of a cliff where he's going to normalize a little bit. And by normalize at this point, I think that's like a mid-range wide receiver 2 for him if they keep giving him target share. But if you sell him right now, I guarantee there's somebody in your league that will buy him as a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy football. I guarantee it. It sounds stupid. It sounds dumb. If you follow fantasy football all year long and it sounds real dumb to say that, but there's no way that this would be one of the most shocking, come out of nowhere top 3 wide receiver seasons in the history of fantasy football, to be honest with you.
I have a question. Where is he ranked rest of the season on Fantasy Pros? I'm very curious.
I'll pull it up. Yep.
Just to know the answer on that.
Adam Thielen is currently wide receiver. Oh my God. Hold on a second.
Is this PPR? Make sure everything is right before you tell the world.
This is PPR. Okay.
I'm hoping it's high.
Holy crap! It's not.
No, that's sad.
He's just not even in here. Where the hell is it? I wish I could search.
You can't find it?
Can I give me the search? Hold on, it's not even in here.
Let me see if I can.
Standard. I got it. Hold on a second. I got it. I wasn't even in standard.
He is low, huh? 24. I found it for you, bud.
So I mean, they can even see that,
that's more where he probably.
Yes, and so the big thing for me is that there's people in my league that I know would take him if I had him. They would pay out the wazoo for this player.
100%.
And so, every league's going to have him. You might have the guy that's like us who kind of knows what they're doing. And, but you're going to have
It depends on what league you're into, but even, there's going to be some really competitive leagues that are going to be and this is what my kind of take on Thielen is he's still going to get targets.
Yeah.
Right? Because he is Bryce Young's security blanket. Mm-hmm. And he's turned into the slot guy where he throws the ball to him 13. He's playing the Amon-Ra, that Cooper Kupp, that Julian Edelman type of role for the Panthers.
Yeah.
My problem with it is he's 33. I don't think he's going to hold up. And even if he does hold up, I don't think he can hold up at that number. So, even if he stays healthy rest of the season...
Snap shares are going to have to decrease at some point.
He's not going to get that target share rest of the season. He's still going to be involved, and that's why I do think he's still probably a wide receiver 2. Mm-hmm. but there's no way he's a top 3 wide receiver. I don't think there's a way he's even a top 5 wide receiver. Or I think absolute best case scenario, I could see him with the start that he's had finish as like a low end wide receiver 1, and that's if things continue. That's best case scenario. I think he's more of like a low end wide receiver 2. And I think
he could end on the season as a wide receiver 1 just by how good he's been to start the year.
Yeah, I don't even think he will though.
Yeah, but I mean, and you also have to kind of factor in the early part of the season the matchups that he has also faced, like against Atlanta, right. One of the tougher matchups in fantasy football this year for wide receivers. He had 3 fantasy points. New Orleans, mediocre matchup, scored 20. And then he played Seattle, Minnesota, Detroit, and Miami, all who have given a lot of fantasy points to the wide receiver position. And Thielen was able to put up 31, 15, 27, and 28. So, like, he's having a lot of success against these teams that aren't great. And now he's going to go up against...
There he has Dallas.
Yeah, he's got... At the end of the season, he's got Dallas. He's got Atlanta again.
Tampa, I think, is tough, right?
Green Bay. Say it again?
Is Tampa's a tough matchup.
He's got Tampa Bay twice. Yeah, Tampa depends on the week. And he's got some easier matchups too. But to me, it's like by the time you hit week 11, that's when the wheels are going to fall off a little bit. And it's like you can hold him and play him for a couple of weeks, but
I think you would still hold him and play him if you really wanted to. Like I think he's going to be a flex. And like I said, I think he could be a low end wide receiver too.
Mm-hmm.
But the value that he has right now is so high.
Oh yeah, it's astronomical, regardless of our opinions of what happens with Adam Thielen. The value is astronomical, and he can't live up to it. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I was actually trying to pull up the where he was drafted in our league, and it was in the 11th round. Yeah. So, like, getting a wide receiver 1 in the 11th round, if he continues at the pace that he is, this is a league winner. You know what I mean? So if we get to week 12, 13, and this is still happening, then we'll have to eat our cake. But I think it's worth selling Adam Thielen, and getting a larger assets back, especially if you got Thielen in the 11th round and you drafted a zero running back, and you have Thielen, go and get a running back right now. Like, it's easy money.
Right. No, agreed. Yeah, he should be. There's a reason he's our number 1 sell.
Yep, we're gonna get comments too from somebody that says,
because those are the people that will comment. That is the people who you should probably sell.
Yep, exactly. All right, number 2 sell quickly. Zach Moss. Like Rick said on our last show, Zach Moss, top 5 running back in fantasy football this year. Jonathan Taylor came back. He is still putting up fantasy points with Jonathan Taylor in the lineup. So a lot of people are like, oh, Zach Moss might still be good. No, he's just not. At some point, Taylor's going to take the majority of the snaps. He's going to have a majority of the run with the football team. And it's going to be the Jonathan Taylor show. And when that flip happens, you don't want to have Zach Moss. So you can either continue running with Zach Moss until he falls off and you don't have that production anymore, or you can sell him now and get something, back for him that can actually produce for you rest of way on the season before Zach Moss falls off a cliff. Now, if somehow Zach Moss beats out freaking Jonathan Taylor for this starting job and he continues doing whatever he's doing, then...
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen.
The NFL is broke. Yeah, they paid him a lot of money. The NFL is broken if that happens. But I'd trade Zach Moss right now.
The running back position is just broken. Moss is a good one. I don't think you can he's value 5. He's somebody that I don't think you can get top 5 value for because everybody knows Jonathan Taylor is back. But you can look at his stats with Taylor back, and he's still producing. So you can still sell him pretty high right now, and I think it's a great sell because this dude is not going to continue playing at the level he is. Taylor is going to take over this backfield. He's already starting to. In his first game back, he only had I believe it was a 17% snap percentage. It was 15%. So they're easing him in back to the role. Last week, it went from 15 to 42. This week, I believe he's probably going to be around a 60 range. And then starting in week 8 and beyond, he's probably going to be in probably the 70 to 80 range. And that in the modern NFL is pretty much a workhorse.
Yeah.
So once that happens, Zach Moss is going to be just a handcuff, and he might have a game here or there because it's the NFL and running back position is weird, but he's not going to be startable, I don't think, every single week.
Okay. All right. Final sell that we're going to have quickly. We got 4 minutes maybe. Is Raheem Mostert. Now, I like to typically buy the Miami Dolphins players at this point. Tua, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle.
Yes.
All of them, because it's just been a freaking laser show, and they're a very good offense. There's a lot of fantasy points to be had there, and when you have one of the best offenses in the league, that tends to come with a lot of fantasy points. The running game, regardless of who it's been, whether it's freaking Raheem Mostert,
A-Chain,
Devin A-Chain, freaking Chris Brooks, it don't matter. Everyone gets in there and eats a little bit. But like for me, I see Raheem Mostert as an older running back that is kind of holding the wall up while Devin A-Chain gets back. And when he gets back, I think Mostert will take a little bit of a backseat. He might still have some explosion games, but it'll probably be few and far between, like every 4 or 5 weeks. And then in the meantime, it'll be 5 or 6 points while A-Chain's taking a majority of the work, because, I mean, that guy looked crazy when he was on the field. So I think this is another one of those older players that's playing way above his skis. He has a history with injury, like all running backs in these West Coast systems seem to have for whatever reason. So I would trade Mostert while the value is high, and try to get something for him instead of wait for the downfall once again with another one of these players.
Yeah, you said Bailey was probably your favorite, and I did say there's a reason he's number one on this list.
Mm-hmm.
Mostert's my favorite. This dude, RB2 right now in the season, he's been phenomenal. Though he is 31 years old. I don't think he has a history of injuries, right? So I think it's bound to happen. I hate to say that because you never know, and it's hard to
we don't want anyone to get hurt.
You don't want anyone to get hurt, but it feels inevitable. And the Dolphins have A-Chain in the backseat. I think Jeff Wilson's coming back this week. He's also, do you know the Dolphins have had the easiest schedule for running backs to start the season? The Chargers game was not a great matchup. That was middle of the pack, and he was okay in that game. Every other matchup has been dark green on Sleeper. So, and I think the Dolphins probably have something to do with that.
Yeah.
Because they're putting up massive points against all these teams. But it's still, the Panthers going into this week ranked 31st in the league against running backs. Yeah. So Mostert's doing great. The Dolphins offense is doing great. He's having great matchups. They start this week with the Eagles. I'm very interested to see how Mostert does this week against the Eagles. And I really don't think he's putting up 20, 30 fantasy points. I don't. I could be wrong. And he could break off a big run at any time. But I think it slows down for Mostert. They have some tough matchups coming up. And then A-Chain comes back. I would sell Mostert. If I had him, I would sell him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think there's him, Zach Moss, and Raheem Mostert both playing above their skis. I just saw something really weird, though, as we end the show here.
Yeah.
Top 5 running backs. McCaffrey, obviously.
Of course.
The rest of them, not so obvious. Raheem Mostert, Travis Etienne, Kyron Williams, Zach Moss, Devin A-Chain. DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hate to say it because for a year or two in there, I was kind of anti this strategy, but zero running back is, I think, officially
I don't know if it works.
PPR strategy.
I don't know if it works, but man, running backs are.
You could have just not draft. You could have just waited, draft Swift, draft A-Chain. I mean, it wouldn't be great, but then you just plug in guys like Kyron Williams off the waiver wire, and voila.
There you go. That's the strat. All right, guys, there's your buys and sells. Be sure to leave a comment down below. Ask us any questions. Enjoy your Sunday. See you later, guys.
See ya.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.